Today I'm going to do a video of Sound Radix's Auto Align phase alignment tool on drums. A while back I did a session with a buddy, Timmy Sean from LA. He came here to town to track drums across 3 days, and my buddy Nick Bertling was also helping assist, and he was tracking drums for his album. So I did 2 albums in 3 days, 40 some songs. We used Nick's drum kit. So the drums had some phase issues, I noticed, as I was mixing them, and Nick mixed his own. He took his tracks with him and dealt with them his own way. But I've had some clients and some other customers who I've mixed, and they've asked me about phase alignment tools and how I do things, and I told a couple customers and clients about Auto Align. So you can go to Sound Radix here, soundradix.com. They got a bunch of awesome plugins, but check out Auto Align, download the demo, try it out yourself, see what you think. But some friends of mine downloaded, and they were questioning how to use it properly and how to go about this or that. So I wanted to show my method. So here's the raw drums that Timmy did, and I don't have any plugins on them right now, so. Okay, they sound good. Timmy's a great drummer. The kit sounds good. Every time Nick tunes a kit, it sounds great. But I still have some phase issues because of mics just looking at each other, basically. So what I usually start with is I use the overhead as the guide track. I've done this many different ways. This is the most solid, repeatable way that I've gotten good results. You open up Sound Radix, or Auto Align, on your overheads. Since it's going to be the master that everything looks at, make that the send, and you make that channel 1. Play the track. I get my level about right around here. Now the side chain is when you're reading something and nothing's coming into this, so that's why you're only sending out. So the first channel we're going to work with is the kick inside. This, you'll see the side chain. Now you set this to receive that same channel. So we're going to go channel 1. Set the input about the same. Now you see the activity now. You want to make sure it's on delay and polarity here. So it does both, not just delay. And we're going to listen. Now, you don't have to solo. Like, it's not only listening to the things it solos, because the fact that you assigned to channel 1, it knows to just look at it. So I can actually turn the overhead off, and it's still going to read it. I leave them soloed like this, so I can clearly hear whether it's flipped or not. And before we jump into that real quick, let me come back a step. What I like to do on my drum master, or folder, bus, whatever you want to call it, and whatever DAW you have. I use this free Vox and Go plugin called Span. It's a spectrum analyzer, but I use this phase correction meter down here to just look sometimes also before I even open Auto Align. It's going to look positive when you just send 2 things to it like that, but if you pan one, like the kick to the left and overhead to the right, play with the level a little bit. You see, it's kind of in the middle. There's some out of phase hits. That's the in-between hits. The actual hits look like they're in phase. If I flip the phase, you can see it's definitely going more negative now. So it was more correct this way. But let's try that kick drum inside or outside. See, now that is full on negative. It would be better to flip this phase and get positive. And that would sound better with the overhead, you know? But check this out. The kick drum, oops, come on. The kick drum inside and outside are out of phase with that flipped. It was better this way. So that butt being off means I can have these two mics, like I recorded them just fine, and they work together. But this outside doesn't work with the overhead. Hear it? Now when I flip it, it's solid. But we already just found out it doesn't work with this. It almost, that sounds better, but that's where some guys will sacrifice. They're like, okay, that sounds better just to flip it because you're hearing it on the kick drum. The overheads might not be that loud in the mix, so you might not notice it. And you could do that. But it's nice when you know your tracks, even on the in-between the hits, just the ringing and all that, that's in phase. You don't want to tune only a couple of strings on your guitar, you know, and leave the other ones rattle out of tune. So what we're going to do is start with this kick drum inside and this overhead. And Auto Align is going to do that in-between stuff that just flipping the phase can't. So we all set up. We're sending on one, receiving on one. Got our level set. All you do is hit detect. I like to get more like, say, let's say a verse part, just a straight. Okay, hit detect, and let it roll. It takes a little bit of time for it to calculate sometimes. You see it moving, it's thinking and doing its thing. There you go. And see that to me, even though that's 231 samples out. But even though we checked the phase earlier, you could see it going back and forth a little bit in span. It wasn't perfect, but it was definitely more positive than what the kick drum outside was. That wanted to be full on negative. But you could tell that it was just a little bit in between on the inside, but this fixed it. Now watch when I flip it. It's kind of hollow sounding. And that's thuddier. Okay. Now we're on the outside mic, which was the problem we just pointed out with the span and all. So we're going to receive on one again. Hit detect. Let it roll and do its thing. It's calculating. You can see its movement. And sometimes you have to repeat these. I've had to readjust the input and output gain a little bit just to make it more. There's only 2 samples on this one, but I felt it get punchy while I was talking. It's kind of hollow. That's more focused and tight, kind of like when we flipped the phase here earlier, except it's not a 180-degree flip. It's less of a flip in a way than, because the only thing this, I believe, yeah, if you noticed, this adjusted time because it's in samples, but the polarity stayed fine. It just shifted samples. This one, the outside, when we were flipping it, was working well, right? Well, that's what it detected too. So it flipped its phase right here. But it did shift it a little bit, but only 2 samples. So it's doing the 180-degree flip when it needs to, but it's also shifting in time a little bit. So we know that the flipping the kick before worked. I'll turn this Auto Align off right here. Hollow. Tighter. But let's try it with Auto Align. On. It's tighter. But when we did this before with just the phase button, remember it didn't work with the kick drum. So let's see if it works with the kick drum now. Yep. If I took this off and took that off, they sound fine. It's nice and thick actually, but that's out of phase with the overhead. But now it's where it needs to be with the overheads. Okay, now let's move on to the snare drum. Same thing, we're going to receive on channel 1, set our levels. Set our levels, let it roll. Hit detect. There you go. That was pretty quick, and I felt it get solid right there. Let's go back to being off. And also, if you noticed on here as well, it flipped the phase and it adjusted timing by 161 samples. Off, hard on. Let me see if I can turn that up a little bit. Do this test again. All right, so you see it got tighter. Now we're going to do the bottom. Once you get a system down to doing this, it goes pretty fast. Hit detect. I hope you can hear that too. That filled in. Off. It's just that underneath. These little steps, you hear making that thuddiness on that snare. That's super important EQ wise, obviously. I don't have to go in and start boosting low end to try to find something. It's going to be there. Okay, I'm probably not even using the hi-hats much in the mix, but like I said, in reference to the guitar strings ringing, even though the hi-hat might not be crazy loud in the mix, I want it, if I got it in a little bit and it's going to ring and do something, I want it to be in phase. So let's set this. Hit detect. And that flipped the phase there and shifted a little bit. So let's listen to it, because we weren't listening to it. Yeah, you can hear, I don't know if you guys, if you're wearing headphones or decent studio monitors in front of you, it sounds kind of stereo and washy. Watch when I put it on. It's right at the center now. Okay, it's focusing on things more. Now we're gonna do a rack tom. There we go. It already sounds like that tom's in phase to me when he hits it. But I guarantee you, if I was to do the span thing again, there's spots where it's in. Yeah, that hit was in. See, but see how it splashes out? I mean, that looks pretty good. But this is going to get all the in-between stuff from when he's not hitting. So do our normal adjustments. Send on one. And And it seems straightforward now, like I'm putting everything on one, but you'll see there's times where I do some other things where I have to send it from another source. I'll show you that. But I'm pretty sure I have to do that on the room mic. Yeah, actually, see, it did flip that. Yeah. I can see it is a little hollow. Yeah, the bottom's a little fuller. So we're gonna go to the floor tom now. Try to move along. And there's a whole section here is just riding the floor. And that doesn't sound bad either. Yeah, okay, without it. Let me do this. See what it does. Even hear that snare I fixed out. It even fills that in. A lot of times I'll have to cut out drum bleed because the drummer, we're looking for a super tight sound, and I'll cut out all the bleed in between the hits. But on other songs and other drummers, I'll leave it in. We kind of want that extra ring, so I want that in phase if I'm going to keep it in the mix. So the next one is this kick shell. This was a condenser mic facing straight at the kick drum, right between the ride and the snare, facing straight down. And we trashed, I can't remember the mic pre, but I think I used a 1176 compressor to crush it. Okay. It's pretty hollow sounding. So that makes it better just on that straight up flip, and I'm pretty sure on the kick drums it would, if I remember, it's kind of weird. See, it's better in some ways that way, but then deeper there, you know, it's in between now. So let's see if we can tighten it up, locking to the overheads. Okay. Letting it roll and analyze. I heard that right away. Hollow. Now let's try that with that kick drum. Start off with it off. On. Yeah. You hear how that bottom end got thick? Right there sounds pretty good. That kick shell, almost acting as a snare mic. There's your overheads, your two kick. That condenser facing straight down. Almost, now it sounds like a complete kit almost. Okay, so now we're not left with, we have two more, but we have the mono room mic, which I do remember was a Royer R121. I don't remember the mic pre. I may have been using my distressor on that, kind of squeeze it, but I may not, I don't remember. We're gonna set that to 1. We're following the overheads at first again. Feel that bottom end get better when I flip the phase here. So I know I don't even have to do the span. I know it's gonna adjust what I need. detect. Sometimes the room mics take longer, it seems like. But okay, there it is out. See, it flipped the phase like I thought, but it also adjusted. Hear that kick drum? Let's see if it still works over here. Yeah, it doesn't hollow out. Now, there's times where, since that Royer is facing the kick drum, I usually blanket my kick drum with the mics covered up. In this scenario, we were in a bigger room that we decided when Nick and I set up the drum kit not to blanket it, I think. I'm pretty sure that outside mic was exposed. So it's facing that Royer, and there's been times where sending the room mic to follow the overhead on Auto Align doesn't work. And what you need to do is sometimes tell it to follow another source. Like I'll tell it to follow that outside kick drum. And I believe we did that on this room. So we're going to try it the traditional way first. This might be an example of something. So we're going to do overheads our main. We're following the overheads as usual, like we did on all the other stuff. Let's see how this comes out. And this was next to the Royer on the outside, left and right, two Shure KSM 32 room mics, 25, 30 feet away from the kit. I do believe, if I can remember, those went through a stereo tube Demeter mic pre, which wasn't mine, so I never used it, and I wanted to try it on the rooms. It sounded good with the KSMs. So let this roll, let it detect. Okay, I heard that shift again. Yeah, it's better on, but let's listen to the kick drum. Okay. So it could work. I'm probably not going to have it super loud in the mix. So the whole kit right now. I mean, of course, nothing is EQ'd yet. I don't have anything done. It sounds better. But I still feel like this room mic is flamming a little bit. So here's the other trick to try when you're not sure if it's lining up with that overhead, because sometimes, like I said, the rooms don't do that. I think Nick and I, if I remember, I could be wrong, we may have measured the outside kick mic to the room, which I like to do sometimes. But I felt like on this session, this is a long time ago, so it's fuzzy, but I thought we measured from the snare to either that Royer or to the KSMs. But since the Royer seems to be working fine, I'm going to change this. What I'm going to do now, even though the snare top is following number one, which is the overhead, you can also tell it to send that same source. It'll come out on channel 2 now. So now that snare top, which is aligned to the overheads, is now sending its signal over to the rooms and put this on 2 now. Now it's going to receive what the snare is telling it. Let's see what our difference is. See, it flipped a phase, but its timing difference up here in polarity is, and samples is different. Now, focus on that snare drum now. Kind of hollow. Now it's beefy, isn't it? So nothing's super mixed, obviously. There's no EQ, nothing on this track. Okay, so let's go back for a review. And then turn all the channels of Auto Align off. Somebody handed that to you, it's not terrible. Kick sounds okay, you think. Snare's a little bit washed out in the background. Hi, it's a little slushy all over the place. But it feels stereo, which out of phase can feel when you flip it, it gets that like really wide effect. But you want drums and all to sound tighter and focused. Let's put them on now. Right at the middle. Try it. Listen to that snare again. Off, on. Get all focused. And everything is following the overhead except this. The rooms just weren't tight enough for me. The stereo rooms, that is. The mono room was fine. The stereo room, I told that to follow the snare top and locked it right in. So anyway, that's how I use Auto Align. Please like and subscribe my videos. I'm new to this video thing, so I need to get some people following stuff so I can make more videos. Thanks for watching.